And I think we are, whoops, ready. Hello, good evening. Good to see ya. I'm Tad. You are whoever you may happen to be today. It's all good. And I'm going to be reading. And first, I'm going to be saying hello. Hello. I'm hoping. I still, it's not, it's not like I'm completely technologically ignorant. Um, I actually know how to do a lot of things. Used to work for Apple. Been on social media since the late 1980s. I mean, yes, I am old, but I'm not incompetent. But this whole Facebook Live thing just completely, I don't know. It just it fills me with angst. It fills me with confusion. Because they say these things. You go and look things up, like how do I make sure that the comments don't do this, that, or the other thing? And then they give you information that actually has nothing to do with anybody or anything else that is available to you. Pull down the such and such bubble. What bubble? What are you talking about? There is no bubble. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here is before I start, I'm going to do the comments early before they start disappearing off my screen again. I'm going to go and say hello to people, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be reading, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right. So there is Jerry. Herr Jüngst. Guten Abend. Good to see you. Kristen, hello. Mahmoud, hello to you too, sir. Claudia, hello, Claudia. Good to see you. And Becca, good evening. And Kelly, good evening to you too. Tim, greetings. Hope you're all staying warm, dry, and healthy. Yes, and I hope that as well. Nancy, checking in from snowy, blowy Central Virginia. Hello. Yeah, you guys are in the middle of a nasty storm, or so I last heard. I don't know what the progress of it is at the moment, but I wish you well, and I hope everybody in your neck of the woods is safe. And as you said, not too much snowing and blowing on top of you. Calvin, bonjour, monsieur. Family and I are doing well. Yes, we've been working. The light at the end of the tunnel is probably some train, as the old joke goes, coming the other direction, but that's okay. I'll live with it. Mahmoud says that my poems and songs in the Ostenar books remind him of Turkish poetry or songs. Oh, nice. I'm glad to hear that. I don't consider myself a poet. I consider myself a writer, and we will turn our hands to virtually anything and fake it. But I'm pleased to hear it, that it works for you as something that brings up memories, or what's the word that I'm looking for? I took a nap, so I'm not quite conscious yet. That brings back, things that feel familiar and resonant. There's the word I was looking for. Medardo. Hello, and back to lockdown here in Mexico City. Oh, God, I'm sorry to hear it. Yes, God bless us, everyone. Rose, hello to you. I told you last time, Rose, I think your name is wonderful. Whether it's your real name or your chosen name, it's a very good one. Rose Wilderness. Excellent. Barban, good evening. Hello, hello. Yes, Jerry, I did, in fact, use that word. Danny, hello. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Emily, good to have you, too. Whoops, sorry, I didn't get a chance to read your comment. It keeps slipping up past me. Again, these comments are really weird. You started the novel today that you finished the novel that you started when these readings first started. Yeah, it takes a while to work your way through a Tad book, no question. Especially only getting it once a week. Hello, Jeremy. That's okay. You don't have to say anything clever. I don't oftentimes say anything clever, even when I'm, sitting here with a microphone and a camera on. So I don't think you should have to worry about it. Tim. Hello, Tim. I'm streaming directly, and I'm sure there are better ways to do it. I just, being in the middle of the deadline season now for months and months, I just haven't had a chance to do anything about it since I started experiencing the limitations of the Facebook Live setup. So I'm sure there are other ways to do it, and I'm probably going to have to figure it out. Timothy, that was Tim Speckins, by the way, that I was replying to. Timothy, cheers to you too, mate. That's something I picked up in England, by the way, which when I lived in England, I picked up cheers, which in English, as opposed to American English. In American English, we really only say cheers when we are toasting something or when we are referring specifically to a plural of the word cheer, like to cheer for something. And we might say, the cheers were loud. Whereas in England, cheers, which also came from the toast, but it's become a kind of a general term that you use to say, that's okay, or hey, how you doing, or I'm all right, or good to see you, or you just sort of say cheers, cheers, mate. And so I picked that up a long time ago, and I say it all the time, and sometimes I get puzzled looks from people. It's like, cheers. What does he mean by that? And I forget that it's I'm not so obvious in America what that means. But I tried really hard to not to pick up on when I was living in England, I made an agreement with myself that I would not, because I'm very chameleon-ish, chameleonic, whatever that word would be. I'm very chameleon-like, and I will pick up accents and things like that, sometimes subconsciously without even realizing it. I remember my ex-wife once was elbowing me sharply in the car, in a cab in New Orleans, because within a few minutes of being in the cab off the airplane, just having arrived there, I was talking to the cab driver and I was already picking up on the New Orleans dialect without even realizing I was doing it. And she was like, stop that. He'll think you're making fun of him. And I didn't even know what she was talking about. So when I moved to England many years ago now, to be with Deb, I had a kind of a promise to myself. I will not pick up an English accent. If I catch myself doing it, I will throttle it, because there's nothing that sounds more pathetic than Americans who move to England and start speaking in faux English accents. Yes, I'm talking about you, Madonna, among others. Although, again, she may not have been able to help it any more than I sometimes am. But as a result, although I deliberately avoided picking up an English accent, I very definitely picked up many, many English terms and use them all the time. And the funny thing is that, as I've said before, I think that Deb's now lived in America much longer than I lived in England, but between us, we're very confused sometimes as to what things that people say in England versus what they say in America, and which expression is English and which expression is American. And we used to sit in our office when the first few years in America saying, do the English say this? And I would say, and Deb would say, I don't know. Then she'd ask me the same thing. Do Americans say such and such? And go, oh, God, I don't remember anymore. No, I think that's English. I think that's British English. Anyway, so I managed to avoid that, but I did pick up tons of British expressions, So I say cheers, and I say, oh, bugger this, and, all kinds of things. Chuffed. I say dead chuffed. I'm dead chuffed about that, which means I'm really happy or excited about something, So, it just goes to show you can keep the floodwaters back in certain places, but then they'll leak through in others. And that's what happened to me. So even all these years later, I'm still full of British expressions, and cheers is one of them. Anyway, so who else have I not said hello to yet? Darlene, hello. How well had I known David? Darlene, I'm not exactly certain which Dave you're talking about. If you're talking about Dave Pierce, are we connecting through Dave Pierce? If so, let me know so I can answer your question. Because I know lots of Davids, and I'm not sure offhand by your name if I know which David you're talking about. Lalani, hello. Good to see you. Ray, greetings to you and to everybody. Jordan, a great pleasure. Yeah, New Year was quiet but good. And the mere fact that it happened and passed made me extremely happy. I'm out of the holiday season. Krista, hello. Good to see you. Calvin, yeah, your dad is the same way. Yeah, it does happen. Matthew, my wonderful, fabulous friend and agent. Good to see you, buddy. Miss you. Matthew's one of the world's greatest agents, but he's also one of the world's finest human beings. So I just thought I'd mention that. And before he goes like, why am I sitting here on my own free time listening to Tad babbling away, and decides to click off. So I just wanted to get that in there. Eric. Oh, okay. Eric says he was very sick for a week last year, feeling a great deal of anxiety, and the Sunday reading made it a little more bearable. Oh, well, how nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to hear that. Renee. Hello, Renee. Good to see you as always. Okay, so Darlene, you were talking about oh, David Farland. Ah, okay. I didn't know David Farland all that well, to be perfectly honest with you. Um, the um, the his passing was not somebody that I didn't know him extremely well. I'm very sorry. I was very sorry to hear about it, of course. Um, but no, I didn't know David all that well, I'm afraid. So let me see. So apologies if that's not a very useful reply. Kind of caught me on the hop there. So, because I had a very dear friend, in fact, one of my books is dedicated to him, David Pierce, who died several years ago. Shockingly, surprisingly, you know, with no warning. And I think the first Bobby Dollar book is dedicated to Dave. So that's who I thought you were talking about for a moment. So I was a bit confused. Melissa, hello, good to see you. All right. So now I've said hello to everybody this time before before the comments all disappeared on me, or it started sorting them by most relevant or whatever crap that is. Um, like a Facebook algorithm can tell me which things are the most relevant. Anyway, so now we are going to be reading. What we're reading from is obviously the Otherland books, the first volume actually, and that is City of Golden Shadow. What we're in the middle of is a long chapter, which I started at 1 o'clock in the morning and couldn't finish because it was too long, which is where as Rini and Kabu are talking, Rini is recovering from her sort of self-forced minor heart attack, really, an arrhythmia that was the only way she could get outside of the system of the Mr. J's, the virtual nightclub where she and Kabu were being held. And so she's recovering from that. She and Kabu are still trying to figure out what's going on with that place and why and how all of this is happening, where these children have been lured in and then fall into comas. As they're talking about it, Kabu is telling her that he has things that he needs to talk to her about because of what happened to him and how he sort of froze up and panicked inside the virtual nightclub before they escaped. And while he's telling her this, he starts to tell her about his life. And it is the chapter's called Elan's daughter's son, and it talks, and in it Kabu is talking about how his father was one of the old style Bushmen who were still living on their own, hunter gatherers, etc., and how his father tracked an almost mystical eland during a terrible drought in their part of Africa, and eventually stumbled into the Okavango Delta, where a more assimilated, I guess you'd say, or in the sense of more, had given up their hunter-gatherer ways, a group also of San Bushmen were living. And they saved him because by that point he was almost dying. He'd been stumbling lost in the desert for so long. And that he fell in love with the daughter of the people who found him. And she came back with him. She fell in love with him, came back with him, and she was Kabu's mother. And then, but his father was arrested for the crime of having caught with some of his friends an animal that they had traditionally always hunted. And some rangers felt obligated to arrest them and did, and threw Kabu's father, when Kabu was still very young, into a prison, into a jail. And that's where we were, and that's where I'm going to continue. So I'm going to be jumping right in with Kabu's voice. It may take me a moment to get the the accent going again properly. So that's what's going on. And so we're still in the middle of Kabu telling his story about who he is and how he came to be and why he is the way he is. Kabu nodded. Let me move this closer so I can prop the book on it. Because for some reason, these Tad Williams books are these gigantic, heavy things. I just can't figure it out. They're ridiculously large and hard to read. Kabu nodded. The scientists argued against it, but the Rangers were the kind of men who fear that they... Now that sounds like Dutch or something. The scientists argued against it, but the Rangers were the kind of men who fear that they will get in trouble if they are seen to let some small thing pass. So they arrested my father and his relative and took them away. Just like that. They even took the hartebeest as evidence. By the time my father and his nephew reached the town, it was a rotting carcass unfit to eat and was thrown away. The scientists, this is some scientists that Kabu's father and his nephew had stopped to help, which is why they got caught by the Rangers. The scientists were so ashamed that they borrowed another vehicle and went to tell my father's people what had happened. They did not find them, but they found another group of bushmen, and soon my mother and the rest of the family heard what had happened. My mother, who if she had not lived in the city world, at least knew something of it, determined that she would go and argue with the government, which she thought of as a wise man with a white beard in a big village, and tell them they must let my father go. Although the rest of the family warned her not to do it, she took me and set out for the town. But, of course, my father had already been sent on to the city, far away, and by the time my mother could make her way there, he had already been convicted and sentenced for poaching. Both he and my cousin were put in prison, caged with men who had committed terrible crimes, who had shot their own families dead, had tortured and killed children or old people. Every day, my mother went to beg for my father's freedom, taking me with her. And every day she was driven away from the court and later the prison with harsh words and blows. She found us a shack on the edge of the city, 2 walls of plywood and a piece of tin for a roof, and she scavenged in the rubbish heaps for food and clothing with the other poor people, determined that she would not leave until my father was free. I cannot even imagine what it felt like for her. I was so young that I did not really understand. Even now I have only the faintest memories of that time. A vision of the bright lights of a truck shining through the cracks between the boards, the sound of people arguing and singing loudly in other shacks. But it must have been a terrible time for her, alone and so far from her people. She would not give up. She was certain that if she could only find the right man, the real government, as she thought of it, then eventually the mistake would be made right and my father allowed to go free. My father, who had even less knowledge of the city world than she, grew sick. After a few visits, he was not allowed to see my mother anymore, although she continued to go to the prison every day. My father did not even know she was still in the city, only a few hundred yards from him. He and his nephew lost their happiness, lost their stories. Their spirits became very weak, and they stopped eating. Soon, after only a few months in the prison, my father died. His nephew lasted longer, I'm told that he was killed in a fight some months later. Oh, Kabu! How terrible! He raised his hand, as if Rini's cry of sympathy was a gift he could not accept. My mother could not even take my father's body back to the desert. He was buried inside, instead, in a cemetery beside the shanty town. My mother hung his ostrich shell beads on a wooden stick for a marker. I have gone there, but I could not find his grave. My mother took me then and started the long trip back. She could not bear to go to the desert again, to the place that meant my father to her. So she stayed with her own family instead, and that is where I was raised. Before too many more years, she found another man, a good man. He was bushman, but his people had left the desert long ago. He did not know the old ways and barely spoke the language. He and my mother had 2 daughters, my sisters. We were all sent to school. My mother demanded that we learn the city ways so that we could protect ourselves, as my father could not do. My mother did not give up all contact with my father's people. When some of the farther-ranging bushmen came to the village to trade, my mother sent back messages. One day, when I was perhaps 10 years old, my uncle came out of the desert. With my mother's blessing, he took me to meet my relations. I will not tell you the story of the years I spent with them. I learned much, both of my father and the world in which he had lived. I grew to love them and also to fear for them. Even at that young age, I could see that their way of life was dwindling away. They knew it themselves. I often think that although they never told me so, that is not my people's way. They hoped that through me they would save something of the wisdom of Grandfather Mantis, of the old ways. Like a man lost on an island who writes a letter and puts it in a bottle. I think they meant to send me back to the city world with something of our people saved inside me. Kabu hung his head. And the first of my great shames is that for many years after I returned to my mother's village, I thought no more of it. No, that is not true, for I thought of my time with my father's people often and always will. But I thought little of the fact that they would be gone someday, that almost nothing would be left of the old world. I was young and saw life as something limitless. I was eager to learn everything and afraid of nothing. The prospect of the city world and all its wonders seemed far more intriguing than life in the bush. I worked hard in the small school, and a man who was important in the village took interest in me. He told a group called The Circle about me. They are people from all over the world who are interested in what city folk call Aboriginal cultures. With their help, I was able to gain a position at a school in the same city where my father died. A good school. My mother feared for me, but in her wisdom she let me go. At least I think it was wisdom. So I studied and learned other kinds of life besides that led by my people. I became familiar with things that are as ordinary to you as water and air, but to me were at first strange and almost magical. Electric light, wall screens, plumbing. I learned about the science of the folk who had invented these things and learned some of the history of the black and white peoples as well. But in all the books, all the Netflix, there was almost nothing about my own people. Always I returned to my mother's family when school was ended for the season to help with the sheep.
and set out nets for fish. Fewer and fewer of those living in the old way came to the village to trade. As the years passed, I began to wonder what had happened to my father's people. Did they still live in the desert? Did my uncle and his brothers still dance the eland dance when they had killed one of the great beasts? Did my aunt and her sister still sing songs about how the earth is lonely for rain? I decided that I would go and see them again. And here is my second shame. Even though it had been a good year, even though the rains had been plentiful, and the desert was friendly and full of life, I almost died while searching for them. I had forgotten much of what they had taught me. I was like a man who grows old and loses his vision, loses his hearing. The desert and the dry hills kept secrets from me. I survived, but only barely after much thirst and hunger. It was a long time until I could feel the rhythm of life the way my father's family had taught me, before I could feel again the ticking in my breast that told me game was near, smell the places where water lay close beneath the sand. I slowly found the old ways, but I did not find my father's family or any other free bushmen. At last I went to the sacred places, the hills where the people painted on the rocks, but there was no sign of recent habitation. Then I truly feared for my relations. Every year they had gone there to show their respect for the spirits of the first people, but they had not come for a long time. My father's people were gone. Perhaps they are all dead. I left the desert, but something in me had changed forever. I made a promise to myself that the life of my people would not simply disappear, that the stories of mongoose and porcupine and the morning star would not be forgotten. The old ways would not be swept away by the sand, as the wind blows away a man's footprints after he has died. Whatever must be done to save something of them, I would do it. To accomplish this, I would learn the science of the city people, which I then believed could do anything. Again, the people in the circle were generous, and with their help I came to Durban to study how the city people make worlds for themselves. For that is what I wish to do, Rini. What I must do. I must make the world of my people again, the world of the early race. It will never exist again in our time on our earth, but it should not be lost forever. Kabu fell silent, rocking back and forth. His eyes were dry, but his pain was very clear. "But I think that's a wonderful thing," Rini said at last. If her friend was not crying, she was. I think that's the best argument for VR I've ever heard. Why are you so unhappy now when you have learned so much, when you're so much nearer to your goal? Because when I was in that terrible place with you, while you were struggling to save my life, I went away in my thoughts to another world. That is shameful that I left you behind, but I could not help it. So that is not what makes me sad." He stared at her, and now she saw the fear again. "I went to the place of the first people. I do not know how or why, but while you were experiencing all the things that you told me in the emergency room, I was in another place. I saw sweet grandfather Mantis riding between the horns of his heart beast. His wife Kauru was there, and his two sons, Kwamanga and Mongoose. But the one who spoke to me was Porcupine, his beloved daughter. She told me that even the place beyond the world, the place of the first people, was in danger. Before the honey guide appeared to lead me back, she told me that soon the place where we were would become a great emptiness. That just as this city world in which you and I sit had gradually overwhelmed my people in their desert, so the first people were being overwhelmed. And if that is so, then it will not matter if I build my people's world again, Rini. If the first people are driven from their place beyond the earth, then anything I make will only be an empty shell, a beetle's hollow casing left behind when the beetle has died. I do not want to use your science simply to make a museum, Rini, a place for city folk to see what was once alive. Do you understand? I want to make a home where something of my people will live forever. If the home of the first people disappears, then the dream that is dreaming us will dream us no more. The whole life of my people, since the very dawn of things, will be nothing but footprints vanishing under the wind. And that is why I can no longer hear the sun ringing. They sat together in silence for a while. Rini poured herself another glass of water and offered some to Kabu, but he shook his head. She could not understand what he was saying, and a part of her was uncomfortable, as she was when her Christian colleagues spoke of heaven or the Muslims spoke of the Prophet's miracles, but there was no ignoring the Bushman's deep unhappiness. I do not understand exactly what you mean, but I'm trying. She reached out and lifted his unresisting hand, squeezing his dry fingers in hers. As you have helped me try to help Stephen, I'll do my best to help you. Just tell me what I can do. You're my friend, Kabu. He smiled for the first time since he had arrived. And you're my good friend, Rini. I do not know what I must do. I have been thinking and thinking. He gently retrieved his hand and rubbed his eyes. His weariness was very evident. But we also have your questions to answer. Oh, so many questions the two of us have. What are we to do about the yellow diamond, that dangerous thing? Rini yawned, hugely and, to her, embarrassingly. I think I may know someone who can help us, but I'm too tired to deal with it now. After I get some sleep, I'll call her. Then sleep. I will stay until your father returns. She told him it was not necessary, but it was like arguing with a cat. I will give you privacy. Kabu stood up smoothly, a single motion. I will sit in your other room and think. Smiling again, he backed out the door and pulled it closed behind him. Rini lay for a long time thinking of the strange places they had both visited, places only linked because they had both been conceived in the human mind, or so she believed. But it was hard to hold firmly to that belief when watching the deep longing and expression of loss on Kabu's serious, intelligent face. She woke up, startled by the tall, dark figure bending over her. Her father took a hurried step back as though he had been caught doing something bad. It's only me, girl, just checking you all right. I'm fine. I took my medicine. Is Kabu here? He shook his head. She could smell the beer on his breath, but he seemed relatively steady on his feet. He gone home. What, you making 'em line up now? She stared at him in puzzlement. Another man sitting in a car out front when I got home. Big man, beard. He drove off when I walked up.
Renee felt a swift pang of fear.
A white man? Her father laughed. Round here? No, he was black as me. Somebody for one of the other places, probably. Or a robber. You keep that chain on the door when I'm not around.
She smiled.
Yes, Papa.
It was rare to see him so concerned.
I'll see if there's something to eat.
He hesitated in the doorway, then turned.
That friend of yours? He's one of the small people. Yes, he's a bushman from the Okavango Delta.
There was a strange look in her father's eye, a small fire of memory.
They the oldest folk, you know. They were here even before the black man came, before the Xhosa, the Zulu, any of them.
She nodded, intrigued by the faraway sound of his voice.
I never thought I'd see one of his kind again. The small people. Never thought I'd see any more.
He went out, the distracted expression still on his face. He shut the door quietly. Chapter 14. His master's voice. Oh, for some reason I seem to have lost my focus. Come back. I'm here. Hello. Nope. Oh well. It's not like anybody really needs to see my face anymore, clearly. Chapter 14. His master's voice. Netfeed News. Merowe to face war crimes trial. Visual, Merowe surrendering to UN General Ram Chagra. Voiceover. Hassan Merowe, the ousted president of the Nubian Republic, will face a UN tribunal for war crimes. Visual, UN soldiers evacuating mass graves outside Khartoum. As many as 1 million people are thought to have died during the 10 years of Merowe's rule, one of the bloodiest in the history of northeastern Africa. Visual, Merowe's attorney, Mohammed al-Rashad. President Merowe is not afraid to stand before other world leaders. My client single-handedly built our nation from the smoldering ruins of Sudan. These people all know that a leader must sometimes take a firm stand during times of chaos, and if they claim they would have done differently, then they are hypocrites. A neon red line crawled at the edge of his vision, as though one of his own ocular capillaries had suddenly become visible. The line wriggled and turned on itself, branching and then rebranching. Branching and then rebranching as the expert system which it symbolized did its work. Dread smiled. Benya Ibenya were not trusting his promises on security. They wanted to know his virtual office as well as they knew their own. Not that he would have expected anything different. In fact, despite some successful past partnerships, he would have had serious doubts about hiring them again if they had taken him at his word. Confident, cocky, lazy, dead. It was the old man's mantra, and a good one, even if Dredd sometimes drew the lines in different places than the old man would. Still, he was alive, and in his kind of business, that was the only measurement of success. There were no failures who were merely poor. Of course, the old man had something to show for his greater caution. He had been alive longer than his hired gun. A lot longer. Dread augmented the field of abstract color outside the office's single window, then returned his own attention to the virtual white wall as the Benya's gear finished checking the security of his node. When it had satisfied itself, it disconnected, the red line vanishing from Dread's own monitor program, and the Benya twins immediately snapped in. They appeared as two identical but almost featureless objects, seated side by side on the far side of the table like a pair of headstones.
The Benya sisters disdained high-quality Sims for personal meetings, and no doubt regarded Dread's own expensive replication as a meaningless and flashy example of excess. He enjoyed the prospect of their irritation, noting the tics of other professionals, and even of his victims, was the closest he ever came to the fondness for the habits of friends that enlivened the existence of more mundane people. "Welcome, ladies!" He gestured to the simulated black marble table and the Yixing stoneware tea service, so important for doing even virtual business with Pacific Rim clients that Dredd had made it a permanent part of his office environment. "Can I offer you anything?" He could almost feel the annoyance that emanated from the twin shapes. "We do not waste our net time on amateur theatricals," one of them said. His satisfaction increased. They were annoyed enough not to hide it. First move to him. "We are here to deal," said the other faceless shape. He could never remember their names. Zisha and Nusha, something like that. Elfin Indio names, quite out of character with their real selves. Names first given to them when they were the child stars of a Sao Paulo brothel. Not that it mattered whether he remembered or not. The two operated so much as a single entity that either would answer questions addressed to the other. The Benya sisters considered names almost as much of a sentimental indulgence as realistic Sims. "Then we'll deal," he said cheerfully. "You reviewed the prospectus, of course?" More irritation, revealed in the slight pause before reply. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can figure out. This is irritating me, why this is not staying focused. Oh, the trouble with technology. Hello, I'm right here. There we go. I don't know why it was so troublesome. Sorry, let me start that again. "Then we'll deal," he said cheerfully. "You reviewed the prospectus, of course?" More irritation, revealed in the slight pause before reply. "We have. It can be done." "It won't be easy." "Oh, it will not be easy." He thought the second had spoken, but they used the same digitized voice, so it was difficult to tell. The sisters had an effective act. They seemed to be one mind inhabiting two bodies. What if it really is only one person? He suddenly wondered. I've certainly never seen more than one of them at a time in real life. What if the whole deadly twin thing is just a marketing gimmick? Dredd put aside the interesting thought for later. "We are prepared to pay 350,000 Swiss credits, plus approved expenses." "That is unacceptable." Dredd raised an eyebrow, knowing his sim would mimic the effect exactly. "Then it seems we'll have to find another contracting agency." The Benyas regarded him for a moment, blank as two stones. "The job you wish done is only technically within the civil sector. Because of the importance of the object you plan to remove, there would be many repercussions from the national government. Loss of the object would in fact have worldwide impact. This means that any contractors would have to prepare a greater degree of protection than is usual." Oh, sorry, I forgot. They don't have accents. Never mind. Let me reread that part. The Benyas regarded him for a moment, blank as two stones. "The job you wish done is only technically within the civil sector. Because of the importance of the object you plan to remove, there would be many repercussions from the national government. Loss of the object would, in fact, have worldwide impact. This means that any contractors would have to prepare a greater degree of protection than is usual." He wondered how much of their unaccented English was voice filters. It was not hard to imagine a pair of 22-year-old women, if his information on them could be trusted, purposefully shedding their accents along with everything else they had jettisoned on their way to becoming what they were. He decided to poke them a bit. "What you're saying is This is not really a civilian job, but a political assassination.
There was a long moment's silence. Mockingly, Dredd brought up the background music to fill it. When the first sister spoke, her voice was as flat and inflectionless as before. "That is correct, and you know it. So, you think it's worth more than 350,000 Swiss credits? We will not waste your time. We do not want more money. In fact, if you sweeten the job for us with something else, we will ask only 100,000 credits, most of which we will need for post-action protection and a cooling off period." Again the eyebrow lifted. "And what is this something else?" The second of the two shapeless figures laid spatulate hands on the tabletop. "We have heard that your principal has access to certain biological products, a large source of them in our own hemisphere." Dredd sat forward. He felt something tightening at his temples. "My principal? I'm the only person you'll deal with on this contract. You're on very dangerous ground. Nevertheless, it is known you do a great deal of work for a certain group. Whether they are the ultimate source of this contract or not, they have something we want." "We wish to start a side business," said the other sister, "something less strenuous for our old age than our current occupation. We think that wholesaling these biological products would be ideal, and we seek a way into the business. Your principal can grant us that. We seek a franchise, not a rivalry." Dredd considered. The old man and his friends, despite the immense influence they wielded, were certainly the object of many rumors. The Benyas traveled in the sort of circles that would know much of the truth behind even the most horrifying and unprovable speculations, so their request didn't necessarily imply a breach of security. Even so, he did not particularly relish the thought of going to the old man with such an impertinent offer, and it also meant he would lose some of his control over his own subcontractors, not the sort of thing that suited his future plans at all. "I think perhaps I should give this job to Klecker and Associates." He said it as lazily as possible. He was angry with himself at being caught off balance. Second move to the Benya sisters. The first shape laughed, a snick of sound like a bread knife being drawn across someone's windpipe. "And waste months and credits while he does the backgrounding. Not to mention trusting the job itself to his team of bravos," added the second, "who will come in like wild bulls and leave hoof prints and horn scars on everything. This is our territory. We have contacts all over that city, and in some very useful sectors of it too. Ah, but Klecker won't try to extort me." The first placed her hands on the table beside her sisters, so that they seemed to be performing a séance. "You have worked with us before. You know we will deliver what you need. And unless you have changed mightily, Senor, you plan to play the role of foreman yourself. Whose preparations would you rather trust your own safety to? Klecker, working in a strange place, or us, performing in our back garden?" Dredd lifted a hand. "Send me your proposal. I'll consider it. It has just been transferred." He curled his fingers. The office and the faceless sisters vanished. He dropped his glass of beer to the floor and watched the last few ounces foam out onto the white carpet. Fury burned in him like a gut full of cinders. The Benyas were clearly the right people for the job, and they were right about Klecker and his mercenaries, which meant he'd at least have to talk to the old man, tell him what the sisters had requested. Which would mean going back to the mad old bastard on his knees, at least
symbolically. Again, just like that ancient advertising logo, the dog listening alertly to the radio or whatever it was, his master's voice. Down on all fours like so many times in his childhood, before he had learned to answer pain with pain. All those dark nights screaming under the other boys, his master's voice. He rose and paced back and forth across the small room, his hands fisted so tight his fingernails cut into his own flesh. Rage swelled inside him, making it hard to breathe. He had 3 more interviews to go that night, minor ones, but he didn't trust himself to handle them properly just now. The Benyas had him where they wanted, and they knew it. Ex-whores always knew when they had you by the balls. Answer pain with pain. He walked to the sink and filled his palms with cold water and splashed it on his face. It matted his hair and dripped from his chin onto his chest, soaking his shirt. His skin felt hot, as though the anger within had heated him like an iron stove. He looked at himself in the mirror, almost expecting to see the water rising from him as steam. His eyes, he noted, were quite wide, so that a rim of white showed all the way around. Relief. That was what he needed. A little something to soothe his thoughts, to cool the tension. An answer to his master's voice. Through his small window he could see the saurian hump of the bridge and the vast scatter of shimmering lights that was Greater Sydney. It was not hard to look down on that pulse and glitter and imagine each light as a soul, and that he, like God in his high place, could just reach out and extinguish any one of them, or all of them. Before he could get any more work done, he decided he would have to get a little exercise. Then he would feel stronger, the way he liked to feel. He turned up his inner music and went to get his sharp things. I do not doubt it is true, said the god. I ask, is it acceptable? The rest of the Ennead stared back at him with the eyes of beasts. Eternal twilight filled the broad windows of the western palace and steeped the entire room in a bluish light which oil lamps could not entirely dispel. Osiris lifted his flail. Is it acceptable? He repeated. Ta, the artificer, bowed slightly, although Osiris doubted that Ta's real-life counterpart had done anything like it. That was one of the advantages of the Brotherhood conducting its meetings on his own virtual turf. His governing systems could insert at least a modicum of courtesy. As if to prove that the bow had not been his own gesture, Ta snapped back. No, damn it. Of course it's not acceptable, but this stuff is very new. You have to expect the unexpected. Osiris paused before replying, allowing his anger to cool. Most of the other members of the Brotherhood's High Council were at least as stiff-necked as he was. It would do no good to put them on the defensive. I simply want to know how we can lose someone whom we ourselves placed in the system, he said at last. How can he have disappeared? We have his body, for God's sake. He frowned at this accidental self-mockery and folded his arms across his bandaged chest. Ta's bright yellow face creased in a smile. He had a typical American disrespect for authority and no doubt thought Osiris's VR habitat grandiose. Yes, we certainly do have his body, and if that was all we cared about, we could eliminate him at any time. But you were the one who wanted this particular addition, although I've never understood why. We're working in unknown territory here, especially with all the variables our own experiments have added to the mix. It's like expecting objects to behave the same way in deep space that they do back on Earth. It seems pretty damn unfair to blame my people when it goes a little flippy. This man has not been kept alive solely on a whim. I have good reasons, even though they are private. Osiris spoke as firmly and calmly as he could. He did not wish to appear capricious, especially in argument with Ta. If anyone was likely to challenge his leadership in days to come, it was the American. In any case, it is unfortunate. We are nearing the crisis point, and Ra cannot be kept waiting much longer. Jesus wept. Falcon-headed Horus banged a fist down on the basalt table. Ra? What the hell are you talking about now? Osiris stared. The black, emotionless bird eyes stared back. Another American, of course. It was like dealing with children, albeit very powerful children. You are in my house, he said as calmly as he could. It would not harm you to show some respect, or at least courtesy. He allowed the sentence to hang in the air for a moment, giving ample time for the various other Brotherhood members to think what might harm Horus, to think of all the things an angry Osiris could do. If you would avail yourself of the information provided, you would know that Ra is my name for the final phase of the Grail project. If you are too busy, my system will be happy to translate for you so you do not impede the flow of conversation during meetings. I'm not here to play games. The bird-headed god's bluster had abated somewhat. Horus scratched his chest vigorously, making Osiris wince with distaste. You're the chairman, so we play with your toys. Wear your sims, whatever. Fair enough. But I'm a busy man, and I don't have time to download your newest set of rules. Excuse me. I don't have time to download your newest set of rules every time I hook up. Enough squabbling. Unlike the others, Sekhmet seemed quite comfortable in her goddess guise. Osiris thought she would enjoy wearing the lion's head in real life. She was a natural deity. No corruptive notions of democracy had ever sullied her outlook. Should we eliminate this loose end, this lost man? What does our chairman want? Thank you for asking. Osiris leaned back in his tall chair. For reasons of my own, I wish him to be found. If enough time goes by without success, then I will allow him to be killed, but that is a clumsy solution. Actually, it's not only clumsy, Ta offered cheerfully. It may not be a solution at all. At this point, we might not be able to kill him. At least, not the part of him resident in the system. A slender hand was lifted. The others turned, their attention drawn by the rarity of Thoth having anything to say. Surely things have not gone so far already, he asked. His narrow ibis head nodded sorrowfully, the beak dipping down to his chest. Have we lost control of our own virtual environments? That would be a very distressing event. I would have to think carefully before continuing my commitment. We must have more control of the process than this. Osiris started to reply, but Ta leaped in quickly. There are always perturbations at the edge of any paradigm shift, he said. It's like storms on the edge of a weather front. We expect them as a generality without being able to anticipate them exactly. I'm not worried about this, and I don't think you should be either. A fresh spate of argument broke out around the table, but this time Osiris was not displeased. Thoth was of the careful Asian character that did not like sudden changes or bold assertions, and almost certainly did not like American abruptness. Ta had not done himself any favors. Thoth and his Chinese consortium were a large and important power block in the Brotherhood. Osiris had been cultivating them for decades. He made a note to contact Thoth privately later and deal carefully with his concerns. Meanwhile, some of the Chinese tycoon's irritation would undoubtedly localize around Ta and his Western contingent. And we're past the top of the hour by a good minute and something, so this chapter goes on for, yes, several more pages, so we will save that for next week. And whoosh. So it is now a minute, 2 minutes after 8 o'clock, and I'm about to wrap it up. Want to thank you as usual for joining me. We are all still just hunkered down here at the Beale Williams Honor Rancho, just staying out of trouble, messing with dogs and cats and snakes and stuff, and things like that. And I am just working on Navigator's Children, and at the moment I am editing the copy edited proofs of Into the Narrow Dark. So that's really all there is to report on our end. So with that said, I say goodnight for this week and farewell till next week, when I will return at 1 a.m. Sunday and then again at 7 p.m. Sunday. I hope you will join me. And in the interim, please take good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and friends and neighbors. And together we will continue forward into the sun. Light. not into the sun itself, which is large and hot and burny. Don't want that. But we will continue forward into the sunlight, and eventually we'll all be able to go outside whenever we want to again. And that's a good thing to look forward to. So with that, I leave you and I say peace.